So you say Jiu-Jitsu is a passion, a purpose of sorts. But what if it's something else entirely? What if the thing that once saved you starts to swallow you up? When the mat becomes your mirror, your measuring stick, even your therapy, and the only place you feel complete. But is that passion, or is it mania wrapped in a gi? You know, I wasn't even planning to make this video until I read this comment. The comment from this guy's wife is what made me realize that we're not quite done with this topic, not by a long shot. Because while Jiu-Jitsu can sharpen you, it can also consume you. And that's what we're talking about today. What it means to lose yourself in the art, and how to come back whole with your identity and your sanity intact. But the advice isn't coming from me. It's coming from a black belt who's been training Jiu-Jitsu for 25 years. He saw that last video and felt compelled to comment because he thinks it's dangerous for new practitioners to wrap their whole identity up in Jiu-Jitsu. So we're going to use his words, his advice, to make sure we remain on a more sustainable path towards true martial arts mastery. Welcome to the Alchemy of Struggle, baby. So we all start Jiu-Jitsu for different reasons, whether we want to be in shape, learn a little bit of self-defense, or we're looking for a new social circle. It starts as a pure pursuit. The practice gives you something solid, something real, and especially for those of us in our later years, Jiu-Jitsu is like a reset button, almost a sanctuary of sorts. For some of us, it goes from being just something that we do to becoming everything that we do. Your schedule starts to shift around Jiu-Jitsu. Slowly, the mat becomes more than training, but it becomes an escape. And before you know it, your entire identity gets wrapped up in Jiu-Jitsu. And there's actually a name for this. In the scientific literature, it's referred to as athletic identity foreclosure. It's when someone over-identifies with their role as an athlete to the point where it becomes their entire sense of self. In the context of Jiu-Jitsu, it's when you can't imagine your life without it. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and even socially. That's the beginnings of foreclosure. It's not just about how often you train, but about how narrow your identity becomes. And the research on this topic is pretty clear. The more someone over-identifies, the harder the fall when it's taken away. And as you fall deeper and deeper into this identity, it gets to the point where training stops being fun. So you're not training because you love it, but you're training because you don't know who you are without it. And one of the clearest signs is when other areas in your life start to suffer. Not only your body, but your relationships and your responsibilities. All sacrificed in the name of this newfound passion. When that identity gets disrupted, as it inevitably will, through injury, aging, burnout, or just life itself, the emotional fall is devastating. Check out what they say on appliedsportspsych.org, that your brain and your body's stress response system will activate to protect your identity. You are so wrapped up in this thing that your body overreacts to the threat of it being taken away. So athletes with stronger athletic identities experience more intense grief and even depression when that identity gets disrupted. And we don't have to look too far to see the impact of this. There are any number of professional fighters who we've seen over the years who keep returning to the ring time and time again, well past their prime. Not only do they damage their legacies, but they damage their bodies and their brains because all they know is being that one thing and they just can't let it go. But this problem isn't just with the pros. It occurs with anyone who lets the mat define their entire world. So just like I said in the last video, if your whole identity is wrapped up in Jiu-Jitsu, what happens when you can't train? I'll tell you what happens. You become difficult to be around. And the irony is that it's those closest to us who see it even before we do. All you talk about is Jiu-Jitsu. And you mistake that tunnel vision for some kind of virtue. when it's really just obsessive behavior. And when that obsession overrides everything, that's when things start to break. And even if you're not physically broken yet, you might already be cracking on the inside. You just haven't slowed down long enough to feel it. Not until someone holds up that mirror and points it out to you. But there is a way back. And this is where I want to share one of the best comments left on this channel. From that black belt who's been training for 25 years. We're going to go point by point so we can digest his advice. Number 1, he said, don't let jiu-jitsu rule your life. And that's the first part of his comment that stuck with me. Because the problem isn't being passionate about something. It's the obsessive tunnel vision that blocks out everything else. It's when it becomes all that you care about and everything else starts to fade into the background. Next, he says, don't focus solely on jiu-jitsu. To embrace martial culture as a whole. He says to learn some judo, some wrestling, some boxing. What this does is it gives you balance and perspective. And that's how you build a well-rounded game and a well-rounded life. Because when jiu-jitsu is your only lens, your growth gets narrow. You stop exploring and eventually you stop having fun. He says the diversity of skills will make your jiu-jitsu better. And he's right. Look no further than the wrestler who comes to jiu-jitsu and for the first month, he keeps getting caught in submissions. But then he learns jiu-jitsu. He learns submissions and he learns submission defense. All of a sudden, he's the most difficult person in the room to deal with. So when you have other tools available in your bag, you're less likely to obsess over just the one. Then he says that he doesn't understand how newcomers get so wrapped up and obsessed with jiu-jitsu. But this is where I think I can provide a little bit of insight. Think of the 30-something, 40-something, or someone even in their 50s, former athlete who thought his glory days were long behind him. And then he discovers jiu-jitsu and realizes there's a second act. Before you know it, he goes all in. Or the office dweller who's never really been much of an athlete, but always wondered what that life would be like. And then he goes to his first jiu-jitsu class. And he realized, I could be an athlete. Not only that, but a dangerous one. Before you know it, he goes all in. Or the couch potato, middle-aged, who thought life had passed him by. Then he discovers jiu-jitsu. And you know the drill. He goes all in. Jiu-jitsu has given him a superpower that he never knew existed. For these guys, it's not just training. It's resurrection. It's rebirth. So of course it becomes an obsession. I'd be surprised if it didn't. But we can reshape it into something healthy. We can reshape it into mastery. Because mastery doesn't come from obsession. It comes from range. From stepping back and seeing the big picture. And realizing that jiu-jitsu isn't your identity. It's just one expression of it. So let's return back to the wife's comment. You see, you can't let this thing become an obsession. She wasn't being critical. She was holding up a mirror. And maybe she's right. Maybe obsession isn't a badge of honor. Maybe it's a quiet signal, telling you that it's time to grow in a new direction. So I'll leave you with this. You don't have to quit jiu-jitsu. You just need to widen your frame. Train for longevity. Train for joy. Train for range. So you don't lose yourself in the art. Instead, you find more of yourself through it. And if you haven't seen the previous videos on this topic, make sure you check them out. I'll link them at the end of this video. And if you have anything that you'd like for me to cover, or you have a question, make sure you send a message to the email that's on the screen. And as always, I want to thank the subscribers and the commenters for all that you add to this community. Your comments are now becoming the content, so keep it coming. But remember, there are others who need this message, so let's help them find it. Like, share, and subscribe. Keep up the good fight and stay safe on those mats. Peace.